Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to What Women Want Talk Radio. I'm Judy Goss, and I'm here with my co-host, Kristen West. And our show tonight is Broadcasting Your Brand. And our guest, 9-time Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist Jane Hansen, will be joining us. She'll be revealing the importance of communication, which we all have to learn, and how to present yourself in public, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or in an interview, or even in front of friends and family. These days, every single thing you do is being watched and listened to. Ooh. And if people don't catch it the first time, it may be videotaped for later and online forever. So it's a really important topic and one that Jane can really teach us about. I'm excited to hear her story, her personal rise up to the top at NBC with the Today Show. She has quite a background. We're honored to have her on the air this evening. We will bring her on in just a few minutes. But first, I want to thank all of you, our listeners, because after 3 years of airing What Women Want here on LA Talk Radio, we have passed over 750,000 downloads. If you want to listen to past shows, go to LA Talk Radio's website archives, latalkradio.com, and find What Women Want, or subscribe to us on iTunes or Google Play. You'll hear some of our celebrity guests who have been with us in the past year, like former O.J. Simpson prosecutor Marcia Clark, 5-time Olympian Jackie Edwards, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff author Dr. Christine Carlson, and also the co-founder of Guilt stopped by a few weeks ago to tell us how she built Guilt to become a billion-dollar business in 3 years. So always fascinating conversation, educational and inspirational, and tonight will be no exception. Okay, a little bit about my background. Besides being the host of this fabulous radio show, I am also a TV host, a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded the nationally acclaimed What Women Want networking group 5.5 years ago. Wow, can't believe it's already 5.5 years, with several live chapters spanning from coast to coast. I am a St. Martin's Press published author and a freelance writer for New York Lifestyles magazine. And the most important job of all, I'm the mom of twin girls who are now almost 13 years old. We're about 2 weeks away here from teenage girls in the household, 2 of them. And I'm also a wife, but that's not a job if you have the right husband, that's for sure. What Women Want Networking, the same name as our show, What Women Want Talk Radio, is having our first National Women's Conference called Spirit of Women in Atlanta, October 7 through 8. Go to spiritofwomenconference.com. And here I am broadcasting my brand, by the way. The conference is featuring VIP sponsor Women for One. The founder of womenforone.com, Kelly McNellis, has millions of subscribers on her website, and she's running a web workshop along with Revenue Breakthrough's money expert Monica Shaw, and the founder of Revenue Breakthrough, and the founder of souljourneys.ca, Jennifer Longmore. And we're also thrilled to have psychotherapist to the stars and award-winning TV reporter Dr. Robbie Ludwig, who's coming in from New York City as a keynote at the conference, along with Melissa Carter, the famed radio show host in Atlanta, who is actually the first openly gay radio show host in the country. We have a lot of firsts tonight. So if you would like to join us in Atlanta, please go to spiritofwomenconference.com. There are early bird tickets until July 15th, so you might want to go check that out. It's $100 off. Okay, Kristen West. Let's talk about Kristen, my amazing co-host of the show. She's an award-winning actress and producer. Her film Seeking Valentina has just been announced as an official selection at the Hollywood Dreams Film Festival in Las Vegas. She can also be seen in the upcoming films Sound, The Spirit Room, and Hell's Kitty, all due out later this year. Kristen, Jane Hansen is a glass ceiling crasher. She was part of the first female co-anchor team in the country. What a legacy to be leaving, huh?
That is amazing, and I'm so glad that we have Jane tonight on the show to help us to communicate more strategically, because women's voices are important, and it's important that we're not only heard but also listened to, and I'm so glad that Jane's here to coach us through that.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job at the beginning of the show on Facebook there with your live video. I'm always so impressed with you. You just kind of lay it all out there and walk people through what you're doing. And, you're genuine, you're real. And I think that's a lot of it.
Well, I like to have fun. And there are many serious topics we talk about. And we sometimes need to find fun and interesting angles, and it just so happens I'm also a little bit goofy as well when I'm not that serious radio personality that we've all come to know.
I don't know if it's that serious, but I do like your insightful questions and things that you say. It's just impressive to me that Jane has built a business, really, her own company out of her expertise and her background and her knowledge. I feel like that's, what you and I are trying to do. We're building our company off of what we've learned. So it's very impressive that she's taken all of this, from the TV world and communications and broadcasting journalist career and wrapped it up now into a really strong brand. So in today's world, we're constantly broadcasting our brand, right? Be it on social media, websites, mobiles, YouTube videos, meetings, one-on-one encounters, too. We still see people live once in a while. And anything you say anywhere could live on forever. That's scary. And it's more important than ever that we're always on brand, that our words resonate, and that we must communicate well. Women in particular have issues with this, something our guest tonight deals with every single day in her work. She's been a broadcast journalist for 3 decades, has interviewed everyone from American presidents to notorious criminals, CEOs, sports figures. The list goes on and on. So it's my honor and pleasure to welcome back to the show, Jane Hansen.
Hello. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Man, that's impressive, Judy, about how many downloads you've had and how many people are listening to the show. Congratulations.
Well, you know what? You helped me launch this show with your name and your brand. Talk about broadcasting your brand. So you really helped me get it off the ground, and I'm very, very grateful to you and, all of the other ladies and some men, too, who've been on the show over the years to help me build this business. So very, very thankful for that.
And you talked about having Dr. Robbie Ludwig coming down as a keynoter for the, what's it called, Spirit of Women in Atlanta?
Spirit of Women Conference, yes.
Yeah, so Robbie has been a guest on shows that I've done at NBC for years, always with her incredible insights, looking at everything from talk about behavior and talk about communication, talk about all kinds of things. So she's going to be very impressive, and I would urge anybody that has the ability to go do it to go listen to her and then to join in the conference, because you're going to learn a lot. Going to learn a lot, and you're going to have a great time, and I'm sure it's all about networking as well.
Oh, Jane, thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's going to be an incredible time. I've been dreaming about this ever since I opened up the networking company. We had a conference a few years ago, and it was very successful. It was a smaller one. It was just in Connecticut, but people flew in from across the country. A couple of people did. But this time we have speakers from Canada and Seattle and, all over the place. So it's going to be a really exciting time, and I appreciate your support. And I'm really impressed with what you're doing. Oh my gosh, this business that you've built. I want to back up a little bit and because when I was reading your bio on the website, it said that you came from the rural prairies of Minnesota. And yeah, I mean, as I'm sitting there reading it and thinking, wow, and she became a TV anchor on the largest and most well-known, morning show in the country, the Today Show. How did you get from there to there? I think about this little blonde girl sitting in Minnesota. Is it Minnesota? Yeah, the prairies of Minnesota. I mean, that's rural, and that's so far from where you ended up.
It's a totally, completely different life from. I remember when I first moved to New York when I was 23. My father was scared to death that. Because it was the big city and he had no idea what was going to happen to me. But my little town of Canby, Canby, Minnesota, which is located almost on the South Dakota border of Minnesota, it's truly a rural community, a farming community. My great-grandparents from Norway immigrated there and settled the town and even built their own church there. I'm related to most of the community. It's 1,800 people. And so I grew up in a place about as far removed from New York City as it could possibly be.
1,800 people?
Yep. Yeah, there might have been more then. Maybe it might have been as high as 2,500 when I was a little girl, but that's it. And the slogan of the town was, "Be all you can be in Canby." So
I love that.
Yep, there you go. So I love these town slogans. I have a girlfriend and she that travels around a lot, and so she and I collect town slogans because you can see them on a lot of small towns across America, which is a lot of fun. But I wanted to be a journalist from the time I was a little girl. My father used to read me the newspapers every morning, and we'd talk about things when I was a child. And I developed this insane curiosity about what was happening in the world. And I knew that the only way I was ever going to be able to use that was to figure out how I could meet people, write about them. At first I thought I would be writing about them. I never thought about television until I got to college. But I think I was blessed with very supportive parents who told me from the time I was a child that I could do anything I set my mind to. I had a lot of mentors along the way who gave me really good advice. And when I was in college and studying journalism, my mentor there, my advisor, said, "Why don't you try TV?" And I thought, no, I can't do that. But I'd done a little bit of acting in high school and college, and I thought, well, maybe I do like to perform. How much performance is there to this? And then I ended up trying it, and I got a job very quickly right out of college because then I took this broadcast career path in college, and it all worked out really well. But my very first job, I was the only woman they'd ever hired in their newsroom, and they thought one was enough. And so I did everything. I produced, and I wrote, and I filmed, and I had a couple of shows, and I did everything, which was great training. But that old one is enough was right there in my face for quite some time.
What a charming story, Jane. And it's similar to my background, which I grew up in a small town of about 3,000 people, so Canby certainly has Poteet Beat. But that's such a charming and inspiring background that you have. And you have 30 years of experience communicating professionally and helping to teach people how to communicate. Is there one issue with communication that everyone has?
Is there one what to everything?
Is there one issue that people strive for in communicating that people have difficulty with?
Yeah, you know what I think it is? Listening. There's a reason. My mother used to tell me, there's a reason you have one mouth and two ears. So I think part of the problem is that we don't listen very well. And listening is, if we can't hear what people are saying, how can we possibly respond well? I mean, there's so many aspects of communication, and one of the, and I teach people all the time about who's your audience. Do you really understand who your audience is when you're talking? And that could be a one-on-one conversation or a crowd of many. And so, you've got to know who is my audience, who am I talking to, and why should they want to listen to me? So that's really key. You've got to think about, it's not just about you. When you're communicating, too much of us think it's about us, but it's not about us at all. It's about the other person or the other group or the audience. So listen to them. Sometimes you stay out of a lot of trouble if you listen before you open your mouth.
It's very true. And I think what you're speaking to also is part of the preparation process is to know who you're speaking to, what your message is, why it's important, and also learning about them. What do you think good preparation is, and how do we know when we've prepared enough for that important speech or that important panel?
I like to use another quote which comes from Winston Churchill, which is, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I can sometimes be a bit of an over-preparer, And the one thing you do want to be cautious about if you're giving a speech or you're going to be in a panel or you're doing an interview or something like that is you don't want to have it so well rehearsed or so over-prepared that it almost sounds like rote by the time you deliver it. So there can be a point of being over-prepared. But what I think is crucial in the preparation process is to really understand who you're talking to. I can't tell you the number of people I've worked with, all the way from the CEO of a large corporation to a kid who's doing a college interview, application interview. And the one thing that I consistently hear from them is they don't know what their message is. They don't know what they really want to say. They'll have 16 different messages that they want to give out, but we don't have the capability as listeners to take that much in. We just don't. So you have to have a really clear message. What is the thing? Ask yourself this question as you begin to prepare. What do I want my audience to take away? What is the one thing I want them to walk out the door knowing or learning or being persuaded to do, etc.? You've got to have that clear in your mind before you can do anything else. And sometimes people just don't, they don't have a clear view of that. And if you don't have a clear view, you're never going to be able to say it well. You're never going to communicate well, and you're never going to resonate with your audience. So that's the most important thing, is what do I want them to take away?
Well, it can be hard, when you are building a company and you have social media out there and videos and blogs, and you're broadcasting your brand, getting it out there, and you know what you're going for, but you don't necessarily know how to relay it to the masses, right? So
Yes.
what do you say to that? Where does someone start with that? Do they write down their, the goal of their company across the top of their, mirror in the morning? Or how does someone kind of stay focused to that, to their brand?
Well, let's just take me, for example. I want to help people learn how to communicate better. I want them to be their best selves. And I know that if I can help people get their message straight, that they then can deliver that, and it will help them enhance their business, personal life, their communication skills with whatever they're doing it with. So what I think is important for me is just simply to make it clear that people will get that message, that I will help them communicate better. Now, I then think about where am I going to put that out there? And so everything that I put on social media, for example, let's say I share something that I've seen on LinkedIn. I will look at that, and then I will look at it from my communications overview, and I'll say, there's a great tip in here about the kind of language you should use when you communicate on Twitter or whatever it is, whatever there is in that article. I will find something that has to do with my communication premise. This will help you communicate better if you do this one simple thing that's here in this article. Or when I'm out at a conference or something, I'll say, Mary Smith just talked about how she always does a breathing exercise before she comes on stage. This is a great idea that will help you the next time you speak in public. So everything I do is built around the concept of here's a way to help you communicate better. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want somebody to accomplish.
And apparently they can use all these tools not just for an interview and not just for public speaking, but at Thanksgiving dinners with the family. I mean, you can use these tools for such a wide range of things that we do, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I did a blog before Thanksgiving this past year because it was right after the election.
And that's what I'm talking about, your blog.
It was so polarized, and people kept saying to me, I can't stand to see Uncle Joe at the Thanksgiving table because he thinks this way and I think this way and it's going to be a big fight. And I thought, my God, people need a couple of quick tools here because it could be a nightmare. And who wants to have a bad Thanksgiving? I just want to eat turkey. So there's so many places that if you can think about it, just think about it ahead of time. And all these little tips really help. They help in almost any situation.
Now, what if you have a problem with being camera shy or stage fright? What tools are there to really bring you back to a calm and centered space when you're speaking? Even I struggle with it from time to time. I know various performers and TV and radio personalities do, despite their experience. Is there a silver bullet to be less camera shy or less stage frighty? I've interviewed an awful lot of people who are big in the limelight, and they are indeed camera shy. I've worked with a lot of people in the news business who are wonderful on camera, but they will not speak in front of a crowd because they get very nervous about that. Some of the best performers out there are really great actors, but they can't stand to do an interview because what they're good at is being a chameleon. They take on these wonderful roles and they do a fantastic job, but they don't want to talk about themselves. So there's a lot of that out there, and there's so much more of it than you think. Is there a silver bullet? I'm not sure that there is, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So I think one thing is to continue attempting to do it and to take some risks. Decide that you're going to do an interview that maybe you wouldn't otherwise do and have some fun at it. Think about why it would be important to you to be in a particular space or to speak at a particular conference or to get on a stage. Why is that important? What will that help you in some way, or will you be helping somebody else in some way? So, and by the way, speaking in particular about women, there was a study that was done, I think it was the Harvard Business Review that wrote about this, that women, and we tend to be so self-critical, and we have so many different communication issues than men do. But what was in the Harvard Business Review story is basically that if a woman focuses on her purpose versus, oh, what if I don't perform well? How do I look? What if I forget something that I was going to say? What if I botch this? What if they aren't paying attention? What if I get rattled? We do all this crazy stuff in our head because we're such people pleasers. We always want everybody to be happy with what we're doing that we get ourselves completely nuts before we step up on the stage.
Did you ever do that in your career?
Of course I did. Absolutely. I used to sometimes get nervous before a big interview, or I'd get nervous before the camera came on, or I'd get absolutely sometimes on a stage when I knew that it was going to be a large crowd or whatever. But I do a breathing exercise, and it really helps. I breathe in for 3 counts, I hold it for 3 counts, I breathe out for 3 counts, and I do it 3 times. And that does a multitude of things, one of which is it gets your diaphragm going so you actually speak better. Your voice is a little bit deeper, and with women in particular, we like our voice to be a little bit deeper. And it really calms you down. It really centers you. So the breathing exercise is great. And another really successful thing is power posing. You guys have probably read about Amy Cuddy, who's also at Harvard, and who's done a lot of studies about power posing. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. But what Amy does is suggest that we do things like stand like a spread eagle, hold a big pose, put your arms high up into the air, spread your legs, and hold these kinds of poses for a minute or so. Now, you're not going to do it on the stage before you start talking, but you're going to do it like in the green room of a studio, or you're going to do it behind the curtain, and you hold the pose, and it really is empowering. And that's all about body language.
And the deep breathing that you were talking about too actually slows down your heart rate with one breath. I think there was an article in the New York Times that reported on this, and with even the first breath, it'll start to slow down your heartbeat. So it really is a good trick in really just calming yourself and trying to get back on track. I want to go into, I read something else in your blog too that I thought was fascinating. In a study conducted at UCLA, subjects rated over 500 adjectives based on their perceived significance to likability, the likability factor. The top-rated adjectives had nothing to do with being gregarious, intelligent, or attractive. Instead, the top adjectives were sincerity, transparency, and capacity for understanding another person.
And that gets back to this big word, authenticity. It's all about being authentic and who you are. And people sense it. Now, a part of that, if you think about it, is also when you talk about understanding other people, it's about knowing your audience. It's about caring enough to know your audience. And it's about, if you know your audience well, and you're listening to them, then that'll translate back. And people also love it when, not necessarily self-deprecating, but when you're honest. When you say something about yourself that indicates you're less than perfect, that they can identify with. That kind of transparency about, This sounds really silly, but there was a time I was giving, when my daughter was little, and I was giving a speech, and I had but before I left the house that night, and I had on some kind of a gown or some sort or something, something very pretty and silky. And before I left the house that night, I had held her up, and apparently I didn't realize at the time because I didn't look in a mirror, and apparently there was some drool on my shoulder of my dress. So when I got to the event, and by then, of course, it's way too late, and I walk into, the ladies' room to kind of check myself out, and I noticed the drool. I'm going, oh my God. So I got up on the stage, and there's nothing I can do at that point, and the light's shining on me. And I said, okay, I'm here. I'm really perfect. I love my dress, but I do have one little issue. I have some drool up here in the corner because I was holding my 1.5-year-old child before I left to kiss her goodnight, and guess what? I didn't notice. So I'm sorry. Anybody here in the audience identify with that? And everybody starts to laugh because we've all been there. And so, things like that where you're really honest and really open, people love it. They feel like they're sharing something with you, that you're a real person, not just some puppet up on the stage.
I think you're so right about that, because I can't tell you how many times, at least in casting calls even, we want real
You've had drool on your shoulder?
Well, no. The only drool I have is on my pillow first thing in the morning for sleeping with my mouth open. Okay. Or, if I'm on Hollywood Boulevard and there's some, really hunky guy walking down, then maybe you'll get some drool on Hollywood Boulevard. But there is this sort of and I would say authenticity has always been in style, but there's sort of a premium on it these days and casting calls for actors, for even print. I see ads where we want real moms and we want real paralegals. And I guess what I'm speaking to here is there is sort of a reality TV aesthetic that sort of come into the mainstream. And, you have these platforms like Facebook Live, LiveMe, and Periscope, where there's a sort of a reward for an unscripted version of you.
And no makeup.
And
well, I'm sorry. I'm not going with that one.
Me neither. I can't. Good Lord. I mean, if I do one picture with just almost no makeup or something, I get the most responses. I can't do it. I mean, Kristen, you're so beautiful. Your videos are just so raw and natural, but I can't do it either. I don't know what it is. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Judy.
We digress.
Thank you, Judy. It's called tinted moisturizer. But
you LA people are so just glowing all the time.
Well, thank you. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is, how do we make the best of when we have to be improvisational? And a lot of people, when they're first starting out and building a brand, they don't have, the retainer for a giant marketing budget. They're doing their own independent videos and stuff. How do we improv effectively as well? Because there's just a lot of outlets where that's kind of the demand now.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think we all evolve and get better, be wiser and older and more self-assured we become. I know I'm a different person now than I was when I had my first television job when I was just out of college. And that's, I think, a part of the natural evolution of time, and we become just more confident and I think we actually dare to be more of our authentic self the older that we get. So some of that comes as we grow, but you have to give yourself permission to be you, because every single one of us is unique. And if we try to be like someone else, it's not going to work, because ultimately the truth comes out. Who we are shows through. It just does. And that's why that issue of transparency is so important. That's why this kind of this idea of understanding someone else is so important. So you can't disguise it, and you have to. And the more we try to disguise it, I think the less successful we will be in whatever we try to do. I vacillate between that old "fake it till you make it" saying, but the be true to yourself, I think that sometimes they're incongruous, and sometimes I think you can fake it till you make it by faking only that you've got more confidence than you truly feel. I don't think you should fake anything else. So it's in a crazy way, the better I think you become better, and I think you grow if you are willing to allow that evolution to show itself and to make changes as days go by when you're creating a company or creating your own brand. You're not going to be the same person every single day, because we just aren't. So I think you should give yourself permission to be you, and give yourself permission to say, I want to change this because this isn't working the way that I want it to work, or this isn't really being as authentic as I can be. So it's letting yourself grow day by day, I think, is a huge chunk of how to accomplish that.
I'm resonating with so much.
If that makes sense.
It does, and I'm resonating with so much you are saying, because there is a certain amount of posturing and that fake it till you make it, but then there's also this tension with being authentic. And, I'm thinking about, I got obsessed with Eliza Doolittle once I found out we were talking to you, because, Eliza in the play Pygmalion and in My Fair Lady, the musical, she goes through a complete kind of transformation and rebrand, if in a way of thinking about it, because of her patterns of speech. And that's sort of a fictional idealization of what happens to her. Is it possible or necessary to do a complete rebrand? Have you ever had to sort of take that on, or is that something? Is that a real thing?
I did a rebrand when I left television and started my own business, because I'm in certain ways, I'm on the other side of the fence now. I was on television in the news business, and then I had my own show, and then I did a lifestyle show, and I was always the interviewer that would be coercing information out of people at times, and sometimes I did some very tough interviews, and sometimes I did some very hard news. And now I'm in a position where I'm coaching people to help them be really good at those interviews, and to know, I'm teaching people the tricks of the trade that I used. And so I have rebranded myself in that way. But I also think that I've definitely gone through various transformations. But I attribute that really to growing older and and feeling more confident. I do think, I mean, the question becomes, who are you really? Are you that person you were at 16? Are you the person that you are at 34? Are you the person you are at 40? Who's the real you? And I think the answer to that question is all of the above. And there's nothing wrong with changing if it ends up being the authentic you. And if it's not the authentic you, I think you get trapped. And even if you're successful, you're going to be unhappy because it's not real.
Well, powerful words. Yeah. It seems like we always kind of, I don't know if every week we do, but it certainly seems like it sometimes, that we come around to this whole inner you. You really have to know yourself, especially if you have your own business, but really in any business, even if you're a career person, that you really have to know what you want. Not necessarily how to get it, but you got to really start at figuring it out inside. Right, Kristen? I mean, you were an actress first, and then you got into producing and now directing. I mean, you're reinventing yourself in many ways within the same industry. It's very admirable. And you keep evolving and growing. And I see that you're still going back to the acting by getting, nominated for these awards and everything else. So I think that we can all kind of keep moving forward in life as long as we, like Jane said, just go back to what's really down in the real you.
I think what Jane's speaking to also is that we discover these new muscles we didn't know we had.
Yes.
And, that's important.
Yeah, there's nothing better than that. Doing something really that you didn't think you could do. I mean, how wonderful is that? And that just breeds more and more success. Taking risks. I actually did something I've never done before. 2 weeks ago, over Memorial Day, I ran a 10K. Now, I don't run, and I was in Colorado, so it was an altitude issue.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, well, I did a run walk, basically, but I didn't run. I mean, I'm not a runner. I didn't train for it. My daughter said, after I told her I was doing it, she said, "Did you train? Are you nuts?" But crossing that finish line was pretty amazing. And now I'm thinking, well, I should do more of those because they're just great. Great fun. It was great fun. And it was such a wonderful piece of success, and I just did it as a lark. And sometimes you do things and you don't think you can do them, and then you do them, and afterwards you're saying to yourself, "Wow, that felt good." So I constantly think that we should take some risks, and sometimes taking a risk is something as simple as picking up the phone to call somebody that we want to ask a question of that maybe could be helpful to us, or to send an email. And I do it all the time. I challenge myself all the time to reach out to people. When I was on television, and I would get emails from people, letters from people, phone calls from people that I didn't know, who would say, "Can I ask you a question? Could you help me with this? Can you tell me how this works?" And instead of thinking, "Oh, why is that person I don't know bothering me?" I was actually, I appreciated it, because I thought to myself, wow, this person is going out of their way to ask me for a piece of advice or a piece of information, and I'm certainly happy to give it to them, because maybe somewhere down the road I will get repaid by somebody asking me, or by somebody treating me to some advice that I could use, or something like that. So I think the more that we stretch ourselves, the more we realize how unlimited we truly are.
That's inspiring that you had that heartfelt desire to be of service, and with the hope of one day, maybe receiving the same treatment in return, because so often there's a mentality of, well, what's in it for me? Or why should I stick my neck out? And I think there is a great joy in taking risks, great and small. I'm a strategic risk taker myself, and I find joy in it as well. What do you think is a way we could take a risk in communication? Is it about reaching out to another person, or are there different ways to take healthy risks in communicating?
Well, step out of your comfort zone. For example, simple risk. Let's say that you're giving a presentation or a speech of some sort, and you have got a podium or a desk. Get up and walk. Take the risk of daring to walk across the stage as you deliver your presentation. Dare to take the risk of not relying on every single slide in your deck. Dare to take the risk of a lot of kind of strategic movement. It sounds very simple, but most people don't do it because they're afraid that they'll lose their place or that they'll forget to say something, etc. You make that kind of movement, it engages your audience. They pay more attention. They hear you better. So dare to take that simple of a risk in a presentation.
Well, those kind of risks lead you to to be authentic, right? When you do something like that, and if you do mess up, then you can be even more authentic and joke about it, or talk about it, right? I mean, there's always a way you can wrap it in somehow. I mean, you've been on TV so much that it comes easy to you and comes natural to you, but I think people that are listening have to understand that perfection is not what an audience is looking for. And if you do mess up, they might relate to you even more.
Absolutely. That's about being authentic.
Right. What about, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to go back to body language, and we are on the radio, so you can't really show people, but I always think it's so important the way you broadcast your brand through your body language. And even as I'm sitting here, I'm leaning towards the microphone. I'm using my hands. You don't really see me, but I just think that, we need to emphasize how important that is. And what are the basics, when you walk into a room, or when you're, at a table with a bunch of men, or, what are some of the basics that we can show strength? Or if we're going on a TV segment and we're nervous, or, I just would think one of them would be leaning in, right? Physically, maybe a little bit.
Leaning in is absolutely, leaning in shows you're interested. It shows that you're paying attention. It shows a positive attitude. So leaning in is good. There's a whole new thing that we like to call women spreading. What do I mean by that? Women tend to keep themselves more closed in, especially when we go into a room full of men sitting around a conference table. But instead, and there are a couple of new studies about this that have been done. What we suggest you do is instead take up more space. Spread your things out on the table in front of you. Dare to put your arm back, lean against the chair, and put your arm around the top of the chair. Dare to do that. You can. It's almost like the power posing thing I talked about earlier, though not quite so blatant. But it's really talking about take up space. Men take up space when they're someplace. We tend not to. We need to take more space up in a room when we're there. When you walk into a room, think about your posture. If you walk in with your shoulders slumped, instinctively, innately, people look at you and say, I don't think I want to talk to them. But if you walk in with your shoulders back and you've got a smile on your face and you're walking firmly, people are much more interested in meeting you, listening to you, seeing what you have to say. And even though you're on the radio, do you know what comes through loud and clear? When you smile. A smile goes right across the airwaves.
Kristen, are you smiling?
I am. I am. You know what?
And I have an addition to that. I heard never, ever, ever pick up the guys, like clean up after yourself, or like the guy's coffee cup or something like that. Like never clean up after them, because that does show signs of weakness. Well, this is terrific because I can see, you just bringing your brand throughout the years of your experience and really putting it into one place where you can teach people how to present themselves so much more effectively, but through so many different means. Like, it's not just about body language. It's not just about how you speak or how you listen, and incorporating all this into one. It's fantastic. I would love to hear about which, like, I noticed on your website you have the services that you offer and things like that. People that are listening to us right now, what could they utilize you for?
A number of different things. There's presentation training, which is doing a lot of the basics of how to give a great presentation. But it can be used for something that's coming up instantly or that you've got on the horizon, or it could be just a general training. There's media training, which is about doing interviews, and if you've got a great brand and you've got an opportunity to go on the radio, for example, or to do a television segment or some sort of a webcast or something like that. So there's training for that. I do a lot of work with people now with creating videos. I actually call it the Trump effect, because Donald Trump, with his Twitter accounts and really using social media with the way that he did, has got a lot of people thinking about how they can avoid traditional media and do their own messaging and put it on YouTube, put it on social media, create their own videos. And these are people who ordinarily wouldn't have thought of doing that. So I'm doing a lot of work with helping them get their messages clear and learning about their body language when they're going to create a video. So that's fun. And then one of the latest things is I've launched with my former co-anchor, Mary Savillo. We've launched an e-learning platform, which is the same kind of communication things we're talking about, but it's a series of video modules. And there are 7 of them. One of them includes mastering social media. One is about how to be great on panels. One is about how to do audio and visual conference calls better. Another.
Wow, so you can get really specific according to what someone does or who they're trying to be, right? That's fantastic.
Exactly. This is very very clear, and with lots of tips and tricks in it, and that is something that it's on video. So there's 7 modules. Each one of them has about 12 to 14 very short videos and exercises and all kinds of things. So it's fun. It's all fun.
Broadcasting your brand. Jane Hansen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Congratulations with your successful business and everything that you're doing. Can people find you on janehansen.com, or
yes,
where would you like them to go? Okay.
That's exactly where they can go.
Go ahead. Jane, JaneHanson.com. I got that right?
You did. You spelled it correctly. So there.
Thank you, Kristen, for your insightful and thoughtful questions. It's always such a pleasure being on the show with you.
Thank you so much. And Jane, thank you so much for really taking us through the minefield of modern communication and breaking it down for us. I was so pleased to have you on the show, and I wrote copious notes.
Thank you. Well, you guys are terrific, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So keep at it.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much again. And next week, Christine Hassler will be on the show telling us about intuitive decision making and what it takes to focus want to make it come to fruition as fast as you can, along with Nancy Ganzekaufer. And they're both business coaches, and they're both going to tell us from their perspective how to become the most successful we can be. It's all here on LA Talk Radio, or go to whatwomenwantradio.com for replays and more information. Thank you for listening, and have a good night, everyone.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss, only on LA Talk Radio.